All right, in this video, we're going to do a brief tutorial on how to use the estimator tool for Pronghorn. Now, just keep in mind, the purpose of these tutorial videos, we're not going to try and pick just the world's best videos. I'm going to try and make this realistic and practical so that you can start to get an idea of how to best leverage this tool. And so for the sake of the example, we're going to use one of our practice videos so that we can compare our measurements to the known score. And the first thing I want to remind you guys, this tool does have limitations. And the limitations are, you can see I have a whole video when you open up the estimator tool for the first time that explains these. But the first and obvious one is we're working off of anatomicals that we don't physically know. We're going off of averages, or you're inputting your own custom anatomicals. But there's always going to be some variance there because these do change. Some are more consistent than others, and we're going to try to leverage that as much as possible. There's also the scale, or the depth of field, or the angle at which you draw your lines. One thing to remember is the estimator tool is giving you the value of a line, not necessarily the measurement itself. So it's giving you the value of the line that you draw on the horn, not the actual length of the horn. So this is always going to be subject to how you use it. But let's go ahead and use this buck from Creed Christianat, which is one of our practice videos. And you can see that we kind of have limited angles here. So we won't go look at the known score, but really we only get two perspectives in this video. So we get kind of a head-on view, which is where I'm going to take my first keyframe, and I use these plus minuses a lot. So we're going to get the head-on view, and then we're going to go to where we have this kind of quartered broadside view. So I made my two photo keyframes. Now I can hit this estimator tool button. And the first thing we're going to want to do is to select an anatomical reference to draw on. So I have these two pictures I can look at. And one of my favorites for pronghorn is the eye width, also the eye diameter. So you can see this eye width here. You can see the drawing of where this is taken. A lot of the pronghorn guys will call it the black to black. So we're going to come in here and we're going to zoom way in. And obviously it's going to get grainy because this is a digiscope video, but I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to go from black to black here. That's going to be my eye width. I'm going to save reference line. So now this is stored. Now I can click this score values button and I'm going to get estimations. For pronghorn, we don't have the app currently set up to be able to use the estimator tool for math. It's not very consistent. We're working on some tools to maybe make this possible, but this is primarily going to work for length measurements as of right now. So whenever you're using the estimator tool, you want to use your best judgment. And what I mean by that is look at the angles where you can best capture this length of horn. So you don't want to just draw the measurement, on any of the frames. You want to try and pick the one that best captures this horn length. And so in this example, you can see if, let's say we're talking about the right horn, which is going to be the left on the screen, I can better capture the length from this angle because I can see that curvature, which means the line is going to capture some of that curvature. So let's go ahead and draw the right horn length here. Now it's associated to the right horn length, and you could either start at the base or you can start at the tip. I'm going to go ahead and start at the tip, and you're going to want to drop as many points as you can whenever you're dealing with a curved horn or antler to try and capture that. And we're just going to follow this down the horn all the way until we get to the base. And like I said, this is just going to create, based on that anatomical input, it's going to create an estimated measurement. So we're getting 15.01 inches. Now, assuming our anatomical is correct and our line is good, that should be pretty close because I was able to capture some of that curvature. Let's go over and do the right prong length now. So we're going to go to the right prong length. And just as a note, there's a couple things at play here with the prong length, for example. This angle is not quite broadside, so I'm not going to get a perfect. I'm guessing the measurement's going to be a little short of the actual, but that's, that's what it should. And the other thing is when you actually score a pronghorn buck, the tape wraps around to the midsection on the back of the horn, and I can't obviously capture that in this angle. So we're still going to follow the pronghorn, or the prong length, as it's supposed to be measured. So it goes across the horn, and then you kind of follow this little curvature here, and you're going to follow that out to the tip. Now, I would assume this is going to be, maybe an inch or so short of the actual length, but we'll see here in a second. So it says 4.66. Now, I'm guessing because of the angle of the photo, as well as I can't capture wrapping around that, what I would probably do for this prong length is I would go add an inch, and that's going to be relatively close to what it should be. So we'll hit this back to calc, and we'll go compare these. So right now we did a right prong length and a right horn length. Now, obviously, you could draw both sides. What I generally do is if an animal looks symmetrical or relatively symmetrical, I'll draw one side, the one that I can get the best angle of, and then I'll copy the value for the other side if the animal looks relatively symmetrical. So we can go over here to the very end of the video and we're going to see our known scores. We'll zoom out here. So we have a right horn length at 14.78. The estimator tool spit out 15, so that's perfect. So we captured the curvature great. That eye diameter was clearly a good reference. And eye diameter is always a pretty consistent one for most species if your video is clear enough to be able to use it. If it's a really far grainy digiscope video, it's sometimes hard to use the eye width, but whenever you can, that's a great one to use. Another really good one is the top of ear to bottom of ear. Now remember, these aren't necessarily the same ones that we'll tell you to use when you're using your eye and using the field judge calculator. On the estimator tool, we're really trying to pick ones that are very consistent whenever we're able to draw those. And then you've got your prong length is saying 4.58. The actual on this buck was 5 6/8. So it's, you know, it's an inch and an eighth, 1 1/8 inch off. And I think that's due to the angle of the photo, as well as I can't quite capture that wrapping around the horn. So whenever you're using the estimator tool, it's not a fix-it-all solution. You're leveraging it, and the better the angles are at which you draw your lines, because like I said, you're getting the value of that line, not the value of the horn or the antler. It's just you're trying to trace that as good as you can to spit out that measurement, and we can't always fully control the anatomical. One pronghorn buck, if you go, let's look at an anatomical here. So in the ear is a common one that's used for the horn length when you're visually doing it. You can see 6 to 7 inches. Well, if I measure that anatomical and it's storing 6 inches, I'm going to get a different output when I go to measure the horn length versus if it's 7 inches. So we'll continue to make more and more of these videos, but just as a reminder, you want to try and get the best measurements you can out of this, and also always use your best judgment. This can really help you to evaluate horn length and prong length whenever you're field judging pronghorn bucks.